Camilla was shaking. Not during a public speech, not during a television interview, not while facing reporters outside Buckingham Palace. According to Palace Whispers, this happened behind closed doors, inside Clarence House, after Princess Anne walked in carrying a stack of documents that allegedly exposed one of the most explosive royal operations in years. And the devastating part? Anne reportedly told her the entire plan had already been shut down by Prince William before she even entered the room. That was the moment everything changed, because this was not just another royal disagreement hidden behind polished smiles and carefully staged photographs. This was a reported attempt to quietly move Camilla's children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, closer to official royal standing through administrative channels most people would never even know existed. No public announcement. No ceremony. No debate. Just paperwork. And according to accounts from palace insiders and journalists who follow the monarchy closely, the operation came dangerously close to succeeding. Today we are diving into what many royal watchers are calling one of the boldest and most controversial power struggles inside the modern monarchy. These stories provide insight into how influence inside royal institutions often happens far away, from cameras, speeches, and balcony appearances. What makes this story feel so unsettling to many people is not simply the idea of titles. Royal titles have always been controversial. It is the way this was allegedly done, quietly, patiently, in the background while the palace was consumed with King Charles's cancer diagnosis. According to insiders, Camilla's office was reportedly pushing administrative reclassifications that would slowly normalize her family's presence inside official royal structures. Not immediately obvious changes, not giant headline-making. Decisions, small adjustments buried inside ceremonial systems, guest lists, attendance classifications, royal positioning. One palace source described it as building a bridge one plank at a time. And that phrase stuck, because when people started looking back, they realized the signs may have been sitting in public view for years. Take the coronation in May 2023. Millions watched the ceremony around the world. The gold carriage, the balcony appearance, Prince George standing beside senior royals. But tucked inside that historic event was something many people barely questioned at the time. Camilla's grandsons, Freddie Parker Bowles and twins Gus and Louis Lopes, served as official pages of honor during the coronation. At first glance, it looked harmless, a grandmother including her grandchildren in a special family moment. But royal historians quietly noticed something unusual. Those boys were not working royals, they were not blood descendants of the monarchy, and yet they appeared inside one of the most sacred ceremonial spaces in British royal tradition. Then came the balcony appearance. That was the moment some palace watchers exchanged nervous glances. Because the Buckingham Palace balcony is not random. Every person standing there sends a message about status, hierarchy, and institutional importance. Royal experts have discussed this for decades, and suddenly Camilla's family members were standing there beside future heirs to the throne. Many people smiled at the photographs. Others saw strategy. But there's more to this story. According to insiders, the coronation may have been less about symbolism and more about testing public reaction. If nobody objected to Camilla's relatives appearing in royal ceremonial positions, then future steps might become easier later. That is where Prince Harry's comments suddenly became impossible to ignore. Back in early 2023, Harry publicly described Camilla as dangerous during interviews promoting his memoir. At the time, many critics accused him of exaggeration or attacking his stepmother for publicity. But some palace observers now point back to those interviews differently. Harry claimed Camilla had spent years building relationships inside the British press and shaping narratives behind the scenes. He suggested information was traded strategically to improve reputations and protect certain royal figures. One particular, quote, deeply unsettled viewers. Harry warned there would be bodies left in the street. The phrase sounded dramatic then, Now, according to some royal commentators, it sounds more like a warning about how ruthless palace positioning could become once Queen Elizabeth was gone, because that is the part many people forget. Queen Elizabeth reportedly drew a firm line back in 2005 when Charles married Camilla. According to long-running royal reports, Camilla would be accepted as Charles's wife, but her children from her previous marriage would remain private citizens outside the royal hierarchy. No official titles, no constitutional role, no royal elevation. That condition allegedly held steady for nearly 2 decades, until the Queen died. And according to whispers coming from palace circles, the atmosphere inside the institution shifted almost immediately afterward. Without Elizabeth there, the old restrictions suddenly became less protected. That is when, insiders claim, Camilla's office allegedly began exploring ways to create ceremonial pathways for Tom and Laura without triggering massive public backlash. Not openly, quietly, one document at a time. Accounts from journalists. And insiders reveal that one of the most shocking discoveries involved the creation of a completely new internal category allegedly labeled extended household members with ceremonial eligibility. Royal watchers were stunned by that phrase, because critics believed the wording sounded specifically designed to create space for people who technically were not royals but could still function like royals during official events. And according to reports, Princess Anne noticed the pattern before almost anyone else. That matters because Anne has long been viewed inside palace circles as one of the monarchy's most disciplined and observant figures. She rarely speaks publicly about family drama, which makes whispers surrounding her involvement feel even heavier. Insiders claim Anne became suspicious after noticing an unusual increase in quiet administrative requests connected to ceremonial classifications. Small things, tiny changes, but together they formed a pattern. And once Anne allegedly started digging deeper, the situation reportedly exploded very quickly, because every trail supposedly led back to the same office, Camilla's. To understand why this situation reportedly became so explosive inside palace. Walls, you have to go back decades, long before coronations, cancer diagnoses, or secret paperwork. You have to go back to Diana. For millions of people around the world, Diana was never just a princess. She became an emotional symbol. Vulnerable, glamorous, wounded, adored. And during the collapse of her marriage to Charles, one name hovered over everything. Camilla. That history never fully disappeared. Even after Diana's death, even after Charles eventually married Camilla in 2005. Royal insiders have often said that Camilla spent years slowly rebuilding her public image. It did not happen overnight. In fact, many journalists described it as one of the most carefully managed reputation transformations in modern royal history. There were fewer public controversies, more carefully controlled appearances, more charitable work, more photographs showing warmth and stability beside Charles. Over time, public hostility softened. But according to palace whispers, there was always another layer underneath that transformation. Influence. Not loud influence, institutional influence. People close to royal operations have long described Camilla as someone who understood how palace systems worked behind closed doors. Unlike Diana, whose power often came through emotional connection with the public, Camilla allegedly preferred quiet relationship building inside the establishment itself. Editors, private secretaries, senior aides, longtime royal staff, and, according to Prince Harry's public allegations, some of those relationships became deeply strategic. Harry claimed stories about him were sometimes used to improve Charles's public image. One example involved reports surrounding his teenage drug use in the early 2000s. Harry insisted the situation had been manipulated to present Charles as a caring father, guiding a troubled son toward help. The palace never fully addressed those claims publicly, but they added to a growing perception that internal image management inside the monarchy could be far more aggressive than outsiders realized. And many people now believe those same skills may have been used during the alleged title operation. What many people don't know is that royal institutions operate heavily through precedent. That word matters enormously. Precedent. Inside royal systems, once something happens publicly without resistance, it becomes easier to justify similar actions later. A small ceremonial appearance today can quietly become evidence supporting a larger institutional role tomorrow. That is why some historians paid such close attention to the coronation balcony. Because historically, balcony appearances are tightly controlled symbols of legitimacy. Every person standing there means something. And once Camilla's grandsons appeared in that space, some observers felt a boundary had quietly moved. Not smashed, moved, slowly. That pattern allegedly continued afterward. According to insiders, Tom Parker Bowles began appearing at more royal-adjacent events in ways that some staff reportedly considered unusual. Nothing dramatic enough to create headlines. Just enough visibility to normalize his presence around. Institutional ceremonies. That normalization is what worried certain palace figures, especially Anne.